The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly before the Kraxan warship, broken only by the distant glitter of stars and the faint blue marble that was Earth. The massive vessel, nearly 3 kilometers in length, hung silently among its fleet of 20 ships, all cloaked in stealth fields that bent light around their metallic hulls. In the command center, Captain Dahoon's purple eyes reflected the soft glow of the holographic display. His scaled fingers traced patterns in the air, manipulating the three-dimensional image of the solar system. The captain's towering frame, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep blue to green in the dim light, cast a long shadow across the polished floor. "Another insignificant world," he muttered, his voice carrying the weight of countless similar encounters. 3 centuries of military service had taught him to recognize patterns, and this one seemed all too familiar. Lieutenant Jin-Ho stood at attention beside him, her smaller frame nearly lost in the shadow of her commander. Her scales bore the lighter hues of youth, marking her as barely into her first century. "The scans are complete, Captain. Their technological level is precisely what we expected." The hologram zoomed in on Earth, showing various points of interest: sprawling cities, orbital installations, and the scattered remnants of their early space exploration efforts. Data streams scrolled alongside the image, detailing power signatures and technological assessments. "Show me their defense capabilities," Dahoon ordered, his clawed hand waving through the display to bring up a new set of readings. Jin-Ho's fingers danced across her control panel. "They've achieved nuclear fusion, but only recently. Their space presence is minimal, a few hundred satellites, most for communication and weather monitoring. There's a small base on their moon, probably housing no more than 50 humans." Dahoon's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of mild interest. "And their weapons? Nuclear warheads, primarily. Nothing that could penetrate our shields. Their most advanced fighters use primitive ion engines. They haven't even mastered basic gravitic technology." Jin-Ho paused, her head tilting slightly, though there is something odd in the background readings. The captain turned his full attention to his lieutenant. "Explain." "There's an energy signature we can't quite identify. It's very faint, spread throughout their system. Our computers can't match it to any known pattern." Jin-Ho brought up a new display, showing waves of strange energy fluctuations. "But given their technological level, it's most likely just interference from their fusion reactors. They're not exactly efficient with their power generation." Dahoon studied the readings for a moment longer than necessary. In 300 years of conquest, he learned to trust his instincts. Something about those energy readings nagged at him, but he couldn't place why. Still, they'd encountered thousands of developing worlds, and none had ever surprised them. "Position the fleet for standard observation protocol," he ordered. "Keep us beyond their 4th planet's orbit. Their detection capabilities shouldn't reach this far, but maintain full stealth regardless." The 20 ships of the Kraxan fleet adjusted their positions with precision, spreading out in a classic observation formation. Each vessel, a marvel of Kraxan engineering, could single-handedly conquer most developing worlds. Together, they were an unstoppable force. "Should we begin preparations for first contact, Captain?" Jin-Ho asked, her voice carrying the eager tone of someone who hadn't yet seen a proper conquest. Dahoon's scales rippled with amusement. "Patience, Lieutenant. Let's observe them for a standard cycle. Document their military responses, their daily patterns. When we do make contact, I want it to be—" He paused, searching for the right word, "educational for them." As the crew went about their duties, Dahoon continued to watch the strange energy readings. 3 centuries of experience had taught him that overconfidence could be deadly, even against seemingly primitive species. But the readings were so faint, so insignificant, probably nothing more than background radiation, as Jin-Ho had suggested. Still, as he studied the beautiful blue planet floating in the darkness, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. The Kraxan Empire hadn't become the dominant force in 12 star systems by ignoring such feelings. "Lieutenant," he said finally, Run a deep scan of those energy signatures. I want to know exactly what we're looking at, no matter how insignificant it might seem." Jin Ho nodded and began the scan, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. Neither of them could have known that this simple act of caution would soon prove to be far more important than they could possibly imagine. The fate of the entire Kraxan fleet would hinge on what they discovered in the next few hours, or what they failed to discover. But for now, they watched and waited, confident in their superiority, unaware that they were being watched in return by eyes far more advanced than they could comprehend. Deep within the mountain fortress of UEDC headquarters, red warning lights pulsed silently through the underground command center. The massive circular chamber, carved from solid granite and reinforced with quantum-stabilized materials, hummed with quiet energy as Earth's most advanced defense systems tracked the alien vessels. Admiral Song Mai stood before the central holographic display, her weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of tactical readouts. Decades of military service had prepared her for this moment, though she had hoped it would never come. Her crisp white uniform reflected the changing lights as she studied the enemy fleet's formation. 20 ships, holding position beyond Mars, she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation, exactly as the probability matrices predicted. Dr. Kim Ta worked at a nearby console, his fingers dancing across holographic controls as he analyzed streams of data. His reputation as Earth's foremost quantum physicist was well-earned, having pioneered many of the technologies that now protected their solar system. Their scan patterns match known Kraxan protocols, Dr. Kim reported, pushing his glasses up his nose. They're following their standard pre-invasion procedures to the letter. It's almost disappointing how predictable they are. The Admiral's lips tightened into a thin line. Let's hope they're equally predictable in their response to our warning. Are the translation matrices ready? Yes, Admiral. We've prepared the message in all 15 formats we've decoded from their previous encounters with other civilizations. Dr. Kim brought up a new display showing the various translations, including their formal military protocols and emergency broadcast frequencies. Around them, dozens of technicians monitored their stations, each focused on a different aspect of Earth's defenses. The atmosphere in the room was tense but controlled. These people had trained for years for exactly this scenario. They're beginning their second sweep of the system, announced Captain Li Su from the sensor station, still focusing on our visible infrastructure. Their scans haven't penetrated any of our quantum camouflage layers. Admiral Song nodded slowly. They see exactly what we want them to see. Dr. Kim, are you detecting any signs that they've identified the defense grid? No, Admiral. Their sensors are interpreting the quantum signature as background radiation, just as we designed it to appear. He paused, studying a new data stream. Though their captain seems more cautious than most, he's ordered a deeper scan of the energy patterns. It won't matter, Admiral Song said. Even their most sophisticated scans can't penetrate quantum masking. Are we ready to transmit the warning? Dr. Kim looked up from his console. Yes, Admiral. Broadcasting systems are primed, though based on historical data, there's a 97.3% chance they'll dismiss it. They always do, she replied, a touch of sadness in her voice. Broadcast on my mark. The room fell silent as Admiral Song took a deep breath. Humanity had hidden its true technological level for centuries, watching as various alien species developed space travel and began exploring the galaxy. They had witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall, choosing to remain hidden until absolutely necessary. Transmit, she ordered. The message launched across space at superluminal speeds, carried by tightly focused quantum beams that would be impossible to ignore. Attention Kraxan Fleet. You have entered a protected system. Your presence has been detected. We request peaceful contact. Hostile action will result in immediate defensive measures. This is your only warning. On the main display, they watched as the message reached the Kraxan Fleet. The response was almost immediate, and exactly as predicted. The alien captain's laughter echoed through their intercepted communications. How quaint. They think they can threaten us. Admiral Song's expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. They never learn, she said quietly. Prepare defensive systems for full activation. If they follow their standard invasion protocols, we'll have to demonstrate our capabilities within the next 30 minutes. Dr. Kim's fingers flew across his controls, initiating warm-up sequences for Earth's quantum defense grid. It's sad. Really, he mused. Their arrogance blinds them to the possibility that a seemingly primitive species might be far more advanced than they appear. That's why we maintain this facade, Admiral Song reminded him. It lets us identify which civilizations are truly ready for peaceful contact and which ones need to learn humility first. The command center continued its quiet efficiency as they waited for the Kraxan fleet's next move. Years of preparation were about to be put to the test, though not in the way the aliens expected. Soon, they would learn why Earth's warnings should never be ignored. Through it all, Admiral Song stood straight and calm, watching the alien ships on the display. She had seen this scenario play out before, and she knew exactly how it would end. The only question was how many seconds it would take for the Kraxan fleet to realize their mistake, and by then, it would be far too late. 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, in a facility larger than most cities, Li Jun stood before the quantum defense grid's master control station. The massive chamber pulsed with soft blue light, its crystalline walls designed to channel and amplify the incredible energies that flowed through Earth's planetary defense system. Li Jun's fingers hovered over the activation controls, his movements deliberate and precise. 20 years of training had prepared him for this moment, though the weight of responsibility still pressed heavily on his shoulders. As Earth's chief defense operator, he knew that millions of lives depended on the next few minutes. Initial power systems online, called out Park Min from her station. Her voice echoed slightly in the vast chamber, mixing with the low hum of the quantum machinery. Beginning full grid synchronization. Around them, countless displays showed the status of Earth's greatest technological achievement. The quantum defense grid, a network of microscopic wormhole generators that encompassed the entire solar system. Each generator was smaller than a grain of sand, yet together they formed humanity's ultimate defensive weapon. Starting primary sequence, Li Jun announced, his voice steady despite the tension. His hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency. Initiate quantum field harmonics. The chamber's hum deepened as power began flowing through the system. On the main display, a 3-dimensional map of the solar system showed countless tiny points of light beginning to pulse in perfect synchronization. Each point represented thousands of quantum gates, all working together in a dance of subatomic precision. Park Min monitored the power fluctuations carefully. Field stability at 98.9% and rising. The Kraxan fleet hasn't noticed anything unusual. Their sensors are still reading our activities as background radiation. Li Jun allowed himself a small smile. The quantum masking technology that hid their true capabilities had taken generations to perfect. To the advanced sensors of the alien fleet, Earth's defensive grid appeared as nothing more than random energy fluctuations, the kind of noise any developing civilization might produce with primitive fusion reactors. Begin aperture calibration, he ordered. I want precise targeting for each ship in their fleet. No margin for error. The computer systems processed the coordinates, calculating the exact position where each Kraxan vessel would be transported. The destinations had been carefully chosen, far enough to prevent any immediate threat, but close enough to habitable systems that the crews would survive. Sir, Park Min called out, we're detecting increased activity from the alien fleet. They appear to be moving into attack formation. Li Jun nodded. Right on schedule. Status of the wormhole matrix. Grid synchronization at 95%, 97%, 99%. Park Min watched the numbers climb. Full synchronization achieved. All quantum gates are ready and aligned. The defense grid was now fully active, though invisible to outside observers. Quintillions of microscopic wormhole generators waited for the signal, each capable of tearing a hole in spacetime smaller than an atom. Together, they could instantly transport anything, or anyone, across vast distances of space. Final system check, Li Jun commanded. Show me status of all primary systems. The main display filled with diagnostic information. Power systems were operating at peak efficiency. Quantum field stability was perfect. Target coordinates were locked and verified. The wormhole matrix was primed and ready. Sir, Park Min's voice carried a note of urgency. The Kraxan fleet is powering up their weapon systems. Li Jun took a deep breath. This was the moment everything had been leading to. His finger rested lightly on the final activation control, a simple crystal panel that could trigger one of the most sophisticated weapons ever created. Inform Admiral Song that we're ready, he said calmly. The grid can be activated on her command. As they waited for the order, Li Jun thought about the years of preparation that had led to this moment. Humanity had chosen to hide its true capabilities, presenting itself as a developing civilization, while secretly advancing far beyond most spacefaring species. The quantum defense grid was just one of many technologies they had kept hidden, waiting for moments like this. The chamber continued its steady hum, the crystalline walls pulsing with contained power. Every person in the facility knew their role, knew exactly what would happen when the order came. They had trained for this, prepared for this, and now they would show the Kraxan Empire why Earth's warnings should have been heeded. From somewhere above came Admiral Song's voice, clear and commanding. The Kraxan fleet has ignored our final warning. Defense grid activation is authorized. Li Jun's finger moved toward the crystal panel. In a few seconds, 20 alien warships would learn the true meaning of Earth's defensive capabilities. The grid hummed, ready to unleash its power, as humanity prepared to reveal just a fraction of its true technological might. The stars hung silently in space as 20 Kraxan warships began their advance toward Earth. Captain Da Hoon stood proudly on his command deck, watching as his fleet moved in perfect formation. Their massive ships cast long shadows against the distant sun, their weapons primed and humming with deadly energy. All ships report ready for combat maneuvers, Lieutenant Jin Ho announced, her scaled fingers moving across the control panel. Standard conquest pattern locked in. Da Hoon's inner eyelids flickered with anticipation. These humans will learn their place in the galaxy. Begin the approach. Show them what real power looks like. The fleet accelerated smoothly, their engines glowing with purple fire as they passed Mars' orbit. On their sensors, Earth still appeared primitive and defenseless, a blue jewel waiting to be claimed by the mighty Kraxan Empire. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Li Jun watched the enemy fleet's approach on his quantum tracking display. His hand remained steady above the grid activation panel, years of training keeping his nerves calm despite the gravity of the moment. They've crossed the outer defense perimeter, Park Min reported, her voice echoing in the vast underground chamber, moving at standard attack speed. Li Jun's fingers tightened slightly. Grid status. All quantum gates synchronized and ready. Wormhole coordinates locked for each target vessel. Above them, in the Mountain Command Center, Admiral Song Mai watched the same data scroll across her screens. Her face remained impassive as she studied the Kraxan fleet's formation. Send one final warning, she ordered. Give them one last chance to retreat. The message flashed across space. Kraxan fleet, this is your final warning. Withdraw immediately or face defensive action. On the Kraxan flagship, Captain Da Hoon's scales rippled with amusement as he read the message. Such brave words from a primitive species. Show them our response. The Kraxan fleet's weapons powered up in unison, their energy signatures blazing across human sensors. 20 warships, each capable of devastating a planet, prepared to unleash their fury. Enemy weapons at full power, Park Min announced in the underwater facility. They're preparing to fire. Admiral Song's voice came through clear and decisive. The Kraxan fleet has made their choice. Defense grid activation is authorized. Proceed with the operation. Li Jun took one final breath. Initiating quantum transport sequence. May whatever gods they believe in have mercy on them. His finger descended on a crystal panel. In that instant, the true power of human technology revealed itself. The quantum defense grid activated, its countless microscopic gates opening simultaneously across the solar system. For the briefest moment, less than the blink of an eye, reality itself seemed to shudder. 20 points of light flickered in space, and then the Kraxan fleet was gone. Captain Da-hoon had only a fraction of a second to register surprise before his flagship vanished. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced in 3 centuries of space travel, a momentary twist in reality, a feeling of being everywhere and nowhere at once. When his vision cleared, his ship floated alone in unknown space. Where Mars and Earth had been, unfamiliar stars now filled his view. His crew stared in stunned silence at their instruments. Each Kraxan ship had been transported to a different location, scattered across carefully selected points in space, close enough to survivable systems to ensure their safety, but far enough apart to prevent any coordinated military action. In the underwater command center, Li Jun watched the confirmation signals flash across his screen. Transport successful. All 20 ships have been relocated to their designated coordinates. Park Min quickly verified the data. No ship damages detected. Crews appear to be intact. The quantum gates performed exactly as designed. Admiral Song nodded in satisfaction as she reviewed the results. Send the follow-up message. Let them know their crews are safe, and what will happen if they attempt to return. The message went out across subspace channels to each scattered Kraxan vessel. Your ships have been safely relocated. Your crews are unharmed. This demonstration represents only a fraction of our defensive capabilities. Further hostile action will result in more severe consequences. We remain open to peaceful dialogue. In 20 different locations across space, Kraxan commanders received the message with varying degrees of shock and disbelief. Their mighty fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, had been scattered like leaves in a wind, and by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Captain Da-hoon stared at the message on his screen, his scales now a pale shade of gray. The energy readings they had dismissed as background radiation suddenly took on a whole new meaning. In less than a second, everything he thought he knew about humanity had been proven wrong. As the reality of their situation sank in, the Kraxan commanders began to understand the true meaning of power and the price of underestimating those they considered primitive. Their empire would never be the same after this day. Panic filled the scattered Kraxan vessels as their crews struggled to understand what had happened. Lieutenant Jinho's hands trembled as she worked the emergency quantum communicator, trying to contact any other ships from their once mighty fleet. The stars around them were unfamiliar, their navigation systems struggling to determine their exact location. Captain, we've confirmed our position, she reported, her scales shifting to a pale yellow in distress. We're in orbit around Alpha Centauri. The nearest Kraxan outpost is 17 light-years away. Captain Da-hoon stood silently before the main viewport, his proud posture now slightly bent. The impossible had happened. Their entire fleet had been transported across vast distances in the blink of an eye. Emergency signals from the other ships showed them scattered across different star systems, each one alone and far from home. This is impossible. Jinho's voice shook as she received another round of distress calls. The humans, they shouldn't have this kind of technology. Our scans showed they were barely capable of reaching their own moon. Back on Earth, in the United Earth Defense Council chamber, Dr. Kim Ta worked carefully on the diplomatic message. The quantum defense grid had performed perfectly, but now came the equally important task of establishing peaceful communication. Admiral Song, he called out, "I've prepared the initial diplomatic broadcast. Would you like to review it?" The Admiral moved to his station, reading over the carefully worded message. Around them, the command center hummed with activity as staff monitored the scattered Kraxan ships, ensuring none of them attempted any desperate actions. "The message needs to be firm but not threatening," Admiral Song advised. "We want them to understand our power, but also our willingness for peace." Dr. Kim nodded, making final adjustments to the translation matrices. The message would be broadcast in all known Kraxan dialects, ensuring perfect understanding. As Earth's leading expert in xenolinguistics as well as quantum physics, he knew the importance of clear communication in these delicate moments. "Broadcasting now," he announced, sending the message through Earth's quantum communication network. The message reached each Kraxan ship simultaneously. "To the Kraxan Empire, your fleet has been safely relocated. All crews are alive. This demonstration represents a fraction of our capabilities. We remain open to peaceful dialogue." On the Kraxan flagship, Captain Da Hoon listened to the message with a mixture of fear and fascination. 3 centuries of military service had taught him to recognize superior force when he encountered it. The humans had completely outmaneuvered them, using technology far beyond anything the Kraxan Empire possessed. "Captain," Jin Ho reported, "we're receiving similar reports from all ships. Each one has been transported to a different habitable system. The humans, they didn't just move us randomly. They ensured every ship would have access to resources and potential aid." Da Hoon's scales shifted to a deep blue, the color of deep thought among his people. "They could have destroyed us," he said quietly. "Instead, they showed both power and mercy. Send a response to Earth. Tell them we are ready to talk." In the following hours, messages flew back and forth between Earth and the scattered Kraxan vessels. The humans provided each ship with detailed star charts of their new locations and information about nearby habitable worlds. They even offered assistance in contacting the Kraxan Empire's central government. Dr. Kim worked tirelessly, coordinating with Admiral Song and the Defense Council to craft responses that would help de-escalate the situation. Earth had revealed its true technological level. Now they needed to ensure this revelation led to peace rather than fear. "Their responses are becoming more diplomatic," he noted, studying the incoming messages. "The initial panic is subsiding. They're beginning to understand that we could have done much worse if we wanted to." Admiral Song smiled slightly. "Sometimes the best way to prevent a war is to show that you could win it easily." "Have the Kraxan central government responded yet?" "Yes, Admiral. They're sending a diplomatic vessel. Their message indicates they're very interested in peaceful negotiations." Dr. Kim paused, reading a new message. "They're also expressing considerable interest in how we managed to hide our true technological level for so long." Around them, the command center continued its efficient operation, monitoring the scattered Kraxan ships and maintaining open communications. Earth's quantum defense grid remained active but hidden, ready to protect the planet if needed, though after this demonstration, it seemed unlikely anyone would threaten Earth again soon. The day's events had changed the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. The Kraxan Empire, known for its military might, had been humbled by a supposedly primitive world. But more importantly, they had been shown a path to peace, offered by a civilization powerful enough to defeat them, but wise enough to choose diplomacy instead. The Singapore Space Center gleamed in the morning sun, its quantum glass walls reflecting the light like a terrestrial star. Inside the Grand Diplomatic Chamber, Ambassador Yun Si watched as the Kraxan diplomatic vessel, Peaceful Intent, made its final approach to the orbital docking station. The ship was smaller than their warships had been, its design clearly focused on diplomacy rather than intimidation. Its silver hull bore the new markings of peace, a significant change from the traditional Kraxan military symbols. "They're right on schedule," noted Dr. Kim Tai, who stood beside the ambassador. "Their approach vector follows our guidelines exactly. No deviations." Ambassador Yoon nodded, smoothing her formal diplomatic robes. "They've learned caution. Sometimes the best lessons come from humbling experiences." The Kraxan delegation arrived in the chamber an hour later. Their lead diplomat, Renko, moved with the careful grace of his species, his scales now bearing the peaceful green hues of diplomatic service rather than the warrior blues they had worn before. "Welcome to Earth." Ambassador Yun greeted them in perfect Kraxan speech. "We are honored by your presence." Renko's inner eyelids flickered in surprise at her mastery of their language. "The honor is ours," he replied, performing the traditional greeting gesture. "Though I must admit, we find ourselves uncertain of many things we once thought we knew." The human and Kraxan delegations seated themselves around the quantum crystal table. Through its transparent surface, they could see the oceans far below, a reminder of the world they were here to discuss. 2 months ago, Renko began, your civilization demonstrated power we didn't believe possible. Our empire has encountered many species, but none who could hide their true nature so completely. Ambassador Yun smiled gently. We have protected ourselves this way for centuries. Your empire is not the first to mistake technological restraint for weakness. Many have made the same assumption. But why? Renko's scales rippled with genuine curiosity. Why hide such advancement? The galaxy would have treated Earth very differently if they had known. That's precisely why we hide it, Ambassador Yum explained. Those who respect even seemingly primitive species prove themselves worthy of peaceful contact. Those who don't. She let the sentence hang unfinished in the air. The Kraxan diplomats shifted uncomfortably, their scales taking on subtle shades of embarrassment. They understood the unspoken implication all too well. Your method of testing other civilizations is elegant, Renko admitted. We have much to learn from your approach. Ambassador Yun gestured to the window, where Earth's cities could be seen sparkling below. Our civilization learned long ago that true power lies not in showing strength, but in knowing when to withhold it. Every species that approaches Earth reveals their true nature by how they treat those they believe to be weaker than themselves. Dr. Kim added, your ships were never in real danger. The quantum transportation was calculated to ensure your crew's safety. We could have sent them much farther, or worse, but that was never our intention. The Kraxan diplomats exchanged glances. The humans' level of control over such advanced technology was almost as impressive as the technology itself. How many other worlds? Renko began, then hesitated. Are there others like Earth? Other worlds hiding their true capabilities? Ambassador Yun smiled, remained diplomatic. That information would defeat the purpose of our approach, wouldn't it? Perhaps some of those primitive worlds your empire has encountered aren't quite what they seem. The implications of her words sent a visible shudder through the Kraxan delegation. How many other civilizations might be watching, testing, judging? We have brought proposals for peaceful cooperation, Renko said, changing the subject. The Empire wishes to establish proper diplomatic relations with Earth. We welcome peaceful dialogue, Ambassador Yum replied. Earth has always preferred friendship to conflict. But understand, we will maintain our protective stance. Other species must make their own choices about how to treat seemingly lesser civilizations. The meeting continued for hours, laying the groundwork for a new relationship between Earth and the Kraxan Empire. But more importantly, it marked the beginning of a fundamental change in how the Kraxans viewed the galaxy and their place in it. As the sun set over Singapore, casting long shadows through the quantum blast walls, both human and Kraxan delegates understood that this day marked more than just a diplomatic meeting. It was the start of a new approach to galactic civilization, one where true power lay not in military might, but in the wisdom to know when not to use it. The crystalline spires of the Kraxan capital city stretched toward the twin suns of their homeworld, their surfaces shimmering with iridescent patterns. Ambassador Han Su stood at the window of the diplomatic tower, watching vessels from both Earth and the Kraxan Empire move through the busy skylanes above. 6 months had transformed the relationship between their civilizations. Where once there had been suspicion and hostility, now there was curiosity and respect. The Kraxan Empire, known for its military might, had learned a valuable lesson about the true nature of power. The treaty is ready for signing, Ambassador, announced his assistant, Park Jin. She carried a data crystal containing the final version of the Treaty of Mutual Recognition, its terms carefully negotiated over months of diplomatic exchanges. The signing ceremony took place in the Grand Hall of Harmony, a vast chamber whose architecture blended Kraxan and human design elements. High-ranking officials from both civilizations gathered to witness this historic moment. Supreme Commander Raylo, once a fierce advocate of military expansion, now stood alongside Earth's representatives. His scales had taken on the deep green of peace and wisdom, a dramatic change from the warrior blues he had worn for centuries. Today marks more than just an alliance. Han Su spoke to the assembled dignitaries. It marks a new understanding of how civilizations might interact. Power does not always need to be displayed to be respected. Raylo nodded in agreement. We thought we were teaching primitive worlds their place in the galaxy. Instead, Earth taught us that true advancement lies not in the weapons we build, but in the wisdom to know when not to use them. The treaty signing proceeded with both human and Kraxan customs observed. As Han Su pressed his thumb to the quantum-encrypted document, he reflected on how far they had come since that first tense encounter in Earth's solar system. In the months that followed, cultural exchange programs flourished. Kraxan scientists worked alongside human researchers, amazed by technologies they had never imagined possible. Human artists collaborated with Kraxan creators, producing works that captured the beauty of both civilizations. But perhaps most importantly, the Kraxan Empire began to change its approach to other worlds. Their mighty warships, once tools of conquest, were gradually converted for exploration and diplomacy. When they encountered developing civilizations, they remembered Earth's lesson. We look more carefully now, Raylo explained during a private conversation with Han Su. Every seemingly primitive world might be another Earth, choosing wisdom over display. It has changed how we see the galaxy. News of the alliance spread across known space. Other civilizations watched with interest as the powerful Kraxan Empire embraced a more peaceful path. Some began to wonder about Earth's true capabilities, but the humans maintained their policy of technological discretion. Let them wonder, Han Su said to his staff during a briefing. Our strength lies not in what we show, but in what we choose to keep hidden. Those who understand this truth are the ones ready for true partnership. As the years passed, the alliance between Earth and the Kraxan Empire grew stronger. Together, they worked to promote peaceful cooperation among spacefaring races. The quantum defense grid remained active but hidden, a silent guardian that rarely needed to reveal itself. Trade routes flourished, cultural exchanges multiplied, and scientific cooperation led to breakthroughs that benefited both civilizations. But the greatest achievement was more subtle, a growing understanding throughout the galaxy that true power often lay in restraint rather than display. Young Kraxan officers now trained in diplomatic protocols alongside combat techniques. Their traditional military academies began teaching Earth's philosophy of hidden strength. The next generation would grow up understanding that wisdom and power were not always measured in weapons. As Han Su watched the sun set over the Kraxan capital, casting rainbow patterns through the crystalline buildings, he thought about how far they had come. The galaxy was changing, becoming more thoughtful, more careful in its judgments of other civilizations. The appearance of primitiveness, they had learned, might indeed be the mark of a civilization advanced enough to no longer need to display its power. It was a lesson that would reshape galactic society for centuries to come.